Have you ever felt like 26-year-old queer pop singer Chappell Roan might be the biggest threat to America since 9/11? Well, a bunch of entitled, hateful homophobes with rockstar brains are acting like it, and according to my Twitter feed, they're all super into coconuts for some reason. I have never seen so many people on the left willfully misunderstanding, misreading, and misrepresenting someone for a very widespread and reasonable position on electoral politics in my life, especially when it's a position that they themselves often promote. The thing is, this video is about Chappell Roan because they've taken a very common political stance you hear from the left and centered it around Chappell Roan. But this video is not about Chappell Roan, except when it is, which is most of it. So let's talk about Chappell Roan. Chappell Roan's position was this. While both parties have problems and she wouldn't stake her career or reputation on either, she is voting for Kamala Harris because she knows that many of her domestic policies are better than what Donald Trump's would be, especially for LGBTQ+ people. She expressed excitement at the possibility of a Black woman becoming president, but to her, an endorsement where she puts her name and projects behind Kamala Harris and Tim Walz would not happen, as both Harris and Walz have vowed to continue arming Israel and funding the atrocities it is committing. It would be an understatement to say that Chappell Roan has been unwavering and vocal in her support for a Palestine liberated from occupation. As you can imagine, the response to this was incredibly normal. Let's check in to see what the American Democrats on the right side of history had to say about the completely mainstream tactic of voting for the lesser of two evils.
Isn't basically any bad option better than Trump for you, regardless of a million dead Iraqis or whatever?
I honestly think I should get to decide who is allowed to tweet. 'Cause no.
Missouri State Representative Darin Chappell R. is Roan Chappell's uncle. Marcellus Williams was executed because of Missouri GOP legislative policy. She has smoke for both sides because her family is literally the problem. Both sides is just a tactic to enable the GOP.
Oh my god. Roan Chappell sounds like a monster. I mean, a woman is related to a man who has different political views. How could she? Should we punish her? Should we have it dominate the discourse? Should we call Perez Hilton?
Roan Chappell comes under fire for her genetic connection to her father's family, as rumors circulate that she may be responsible for the beliefs of the old men her grandmother birthed 30 years before Rowan was born.
Now that we've decided she's the woman we all continue to hate this week, what else can we make up about her? There's gotta be some more slander in here somewhere. Oh, here it is.
As a gay man, I absolutely love being told by cis straight white chicks, specifically pandering to my community, that both sides are bad when only one is going after trans kids, trying to repeal marriage equality, banning gay adoption, or criminalizing drag, which she loves.
Friendly reminder that Chappell Roan is defo not a lesbian, and I totally haven't put $5,000 on her being married to a man in 5 years.
Genuinely asking, is Chappell Roan actually queer, or is she just a culture vulture? So
if she doesn't full-throatedly boot and blindly promote the Democratic Party, she is in fact the worst thing you could call any gay person? A heterosexual? Listen, you it could arguably be called queer, but deep-throating the boot of the state definitely isn't. And we're gonna get back to the way these gays are using the word queer because it's really starting to piss me off.
The Chappell Roan career and speedrun is fascinating to watch.
Yeah, like most of these people just learned of her existence today. Chappell Roan?
It's a career pivot. She'll be on Rogan in 2 weeks, Tucker the following month, and appear on stage with Trump before the election.
You know what? I think that's possible. She'll be the token LGBT MAGA girl.
Nothing says MAGA like a lesbian drag queen trying to push the liberals left. When you find yourself wondering where this is coming from, why it's so strangely vile and unreasonable, why they consistently do not argue against what she actually said, but only straw men, a closer look at the accounts of the most aggressive tweets reveals quite a lot.
Modern day see Chappell Roan living out her German last name Amstadt by continuing to ignore of Israeli women and wishing genocide on Jews in cute, quirky pop culture fashion. Hashtag Kaylee Amstadt might as well be lesbian Eva Braun. It's despicable that jihadist simp was given enough attention to rise at all. Hope she enjoys the Muslim ban of her campaign for Trump and against marriage equality is successful. Oh, you're attempting to lie about Chappell Roan Bothsidesing the election? Kamala is perfectly fine on Palestine. What you don't get is that free Palestine is immensely unpopular. Free Palestine.
The brutal reality is that Israel had the moral authority to obliterate Gaza.
Jesus Christ. We'll touch on this later, but obviously I can't say that all her critics are vocally pro-genocide. Some people who had previously posted in support of Chappell Roan have called for a ceasefire.
My online dom lives in Israel. Because she's so stressed out about living next to a war zone, I haven't properly gotten off since October 7th. Ceasefire now! I just want everyone to come together in peace. Me in particular.
I'm gonna lose my shit. A little surprisingly, some of her detractors have even decided that the way to slander a person vocally pro-Palestine is to accuse them of nebulous ties to Israel.
Her management has ties to Israel.
We literally can't have anything.
Literally.
Do you have anything that shows this? I haven't been able to find anything.
Someone else told me about it. Don't really care to look into it. I believe it's the truth, and I don't care.
My source? My source is that I made it the fuck up. As you can see, many of her critics are simply articulate, educated, well-meaning people who just have valid concerns about her criticizing the Democratic Party. We'll get into all these concerns more, but I think it's important that we go back and start at the beginning. Because this did not start with her comments on Palestine or even the election. This hate campaign has been going on for months, beginning with the allegations that Chappell Roan detested her fans, her fame, and the public. The actual story is that she put out a video asking people to respect her boundaries when she's out amongst the people, and to not be upset if she declines to take a photo or give you a hug. But boundaries are something you're presumed to have no right to set when you're an artist. Boundaries are said to be the price an artist pays for their art's popularity, for the artist's fame. And you're not only expected to take it, you're obligated to like it. And so, after she asked people to respect her boundaries, the narrative began that she was just a spoiled little bitch who just wanted publicity and wasn't cut out for fame.
She's so desperate for attention. I'm crying.
Asking for a photo or a hug is the most normal thing in the world. This is her issue. She's gaslighting us.
She's been famous for 5 whole minutes and already about it.
Yeah, she sounds like an entitled brat.
Today I learned entitled is when woman and says no. This is disturbing on its own, but even more so when you realize what led to her making the video. When you realize that she made it because she has been living through intense stalking and dealing with the emotional aftermath of a recent sexual assault. All from the fans she should be grateful for attention from. I'm Caelan Conrad. You're probably gay. None of this is real, and this video is not about Chappell Roan. Except that it absolutely is. But it's not.
She doesn't know being famous comes with lots of sacrifices.
Welcome to being famous. That's the downside of having a net worth in the millions. Seems like a fair trade to me. I don't know.
You have to pay for your fame. It doesn't come for free.
Not saying it isn't weird, but that's just what it is. She wanted to be famous. She knew what it would come with. You made your bed. Now lay in it.
Welcome to the Pink Pony Club. Let's start from zero for the boomers and strigates in the audience with a bit of backstory. Who or what is Chappell Roan? Well, first of all, there is no Chappell Roan. It's all a lie.
Her real name is Kaylee Rose Amstutz. I bet the name Chappell was chosen on purpose to take attention and Google searches away from Dave Chappelle because he's a Trump supporter. She works with Dan Nigro. He's clearly Chappell's industry handler.
I knew there was nobody named goddamn Chappell Roan from Willard, Missouri. Kaylee Amstutz makes a lot more sense. Oh, and she went to Interlochen, you know, the Epstein music camp.
I love that she's now connected to Epstein, as if being a child at a music camp is analogous to getting on his plane and going to his island for to do. I knew there was nobody named goddamn Yekaterina Petrovna Zemolodchkova who has been called Lenin in the sheets and Dostoevsky in the sheets. Like many musicians and most drag artists, she does not perform under the name she goes by day to day. I also have some terrible news for you about Lady Gaga, Lana Del Rey, Miley Cyrus, Alicia Keys, Katy Perry, the Pitbull. So, Kaylee Rose Amstutz, who I will call Chappell Roan throughout the rest of this video, is a real person, regardless of what she asks to be called. Shocking, I know. It's 2024, okay? Get woke. Women are people now too. Unless you ask, like, JK or her best friend Hitler. Most of this little biography portion is based on the incredibly personal and in-depth interview in Rolling Stone by Brittany Spanos. Definitely check it out because it's well worth the read. Chappell Roan is from Willard, Missouri. She was one of them small-town gays many of us can relate to. A shy, weird little loner who made her own clothes and who just generally had a rough time of it.
Kaylee, as she explains, was difficult to raise. Angry, depressed, defiant, emotional, manipulative, mean.
I felt so miserable for my whole childhood,
she says. She would talk back and constantly get in trouble.
All my parents could do was try their best.
Much later, she would be diagnosed with bipolar II disorder.
At that summer camp for evil children she went to in 2014, she wrote a track named Die Young, a sad girl ballad that she now finds kind of cringy, but when Spotify fed it to me, I was like, oh my god, who is this? I like this. And it turns out it was just Chappell Roan singing in cursive. And after posting that song on YouTube, she began to get meetings with people in the industry. By 17, she was signed to Atlantic Records, where she took on her name for the stage and her eventual drag persona. And it had nothing to do with Dave Chappelle. And I think if you asked 17-year-old Chappell Roan who that was, I doubt she even would have known. Her name actually comes from her late grandfather, Dennis Chappell's favorite song, a cowboy ballad.
The Strawberry Roan.
Which is kind of about a pink pony. Forgoing her last year of high school, she had to commute from her hometown in Willard to New York or LA. It wasn't until her first album came out that she moved to LA, where she openly began living as a queer woman. The song she wrote about this experience, Pink Pony Club, did not impress Atlantic Records, but if anyone cares, it impressed me, and I cry pretty much every time I listen to it. It is the quintessential ballad of a small-town gay needing to get out and find a community. Despite it being a pop song, which is usually not my vibe, there's so much raw emotion in the lyrics and in her voice that it definitely left a mark on me the first time I heard it. Let's see how much of it YouTube will let me play. Chills. Goosebumps. I just threw up my heart in my mouth. I would have loved to make you sit through the entire music video while staring at you like this so I can relive seeing it for the first time through your eyes, but I've recently started pretending to be more normal.
Is it working?
By the way, the less edited version of this video, where I didn't have to cut out 90% of the music video because of copyright violations, is available on Patreon without ads, which is where you can support me in making videos like this. I do all the editing, I build the CGI sets, I sit at my desk for hundreds of hours a week, pouring my heart and soul into these, and if you ever want to support me, that's the place to do it. Lots of benefits, including watch parties, Patreon-only Discord, and all of my videos ad and sponsor free, and in the future, maybe even available early, but maybe not. So, Pink Pony Club. Definitely my favorite song of hers, but Atlantic Records wasn't so hot to go with it.
Atlantic tried to discourage her from releasing it.
I was so devastated,
she recalls.
It made me second-guess myself.
She fought for it to be released, and she won. And people loved it. But as the pandemic began and then worsened, she and others were dropped from her label right before the ending of her 4-year romantic relationship. And things were rough.
Later that year, after decades of not understanding why she was so sad and angry, she finally got her answer with the diagnosis of bipolar II disorder. At 22, her life and career were in limbo. Roan moved back to Missouri and tried to heal. She and her family entered therapy together.
It saved us,
she explains.
I was like, I can't go my whole life hating my parents for not knowing how to handle a really, really sick child.
She spent the next year piecing her life back together. She worked at a drive-thru before moving back to LA and getting gigs as a nanny and production assistant. In the summer of 2021, she and Dan Nigro reconnected and started working on the first song she would release as an independent artist.
This is around when Chappell began to lean into her current persona, make it more her, more drag, make it gayer and lesbier. She released brand new music and at the same time began to go viral for TikToks that showcased more of her distinctive personality.
I started gaining a lot of followers when I was being really insane on TikTok,
she explains. During this time, Roan was posting and promoting her way through hypomania, a common feature of bipolar II that involves elevated mood and hyperactivity.
I wasn't sleeping,
she says.
I was on the incorrect meds. I had the energy and the delusion and realized that this app is fueled off of mental illness.
In 2022, Roan entered outpatient therapy. She had been at other points around that time. She'd had for the first time actually planned how she would do it. Thankfully, she had a clear enough mind to realize she'd hit bottom.
She tried to deal with her rising fame as best as she could, find a balance where it was possible to take care of her mental health, and also pursue her art. That year, she performed as the opening act for Olivia Rodrigo, and right after the show, she headed back to outpatient treatment.
I realized I can't live like this. I can't live being so depressed or feel so lost that I want to kill myself.
Later that year, when the label started approaching her again, she had an album under her belt and a sold-out tour. She had the upper hand that comes with success as an artist, and so was able to be unwilling to compromise her values or her art.
All the money goes to the world building. That's why I'm saying no to every brand deal right now, because I'm like, does it fit in this world? No, H&M does not fit in this world. Also, H&M, no amount of money is going to make me consider working with anyone. It has to be 100% right.
As her success continues, she continues to stay true to her vision and her values. Chappell opens each show of her tour with a local drag artist from the area, and a portion of the proceeds from her shows go to a charity called For the Girls, a Black trans-led collective that fundraises money to help Black trans people pay for their rent, gender-affirming surgeries, co-pays for medicines and doctor's visits, and like the kind of day-to-day necessities that are often forgotten about. At her show, she sold signed risographs for upwards of $100 each, with proceeds going towards Palestinian aid. And at other shows, she has had people bring handmade concert friendship bracelets, which were then collected and sold, with all the proceeds also going towards aid for Gaza, Yemen, and Syria. Her performances are political, her principles are woven through her art, and at this point are inseparable from it. In doing it that way, refusing to be inauthentic, to be less vocal, less queer. 4 years after it was released, Pink Pony Club has made it to the top 20, and her single Good Luck Babe, about being a lesbian in love with a woman whose compet feelings push her into marriage with a man, has been in the top 10 for months. She has, what feels like overnight, become one of the biggest lesbians in the world. Wait, no, not one of the biggest lesbian artists in the world. She's not just like huge. So yeah, huge lesbian, which is why this year the White House invited her to come perform for the president at the White House's Pride celebration. But Chappell declined, announcing on stage before a performance,
"You have forgotten what's etched on my pretty little toes. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. That means freedom and trans rights. That means freedom and women's rights. It especially means freedom for all people and oppressed." It especially means freedom for all oppressed people in occupied territories. As a response to the White House, who asked me to perform for Pride. We want liberty, justice, and freedom for all. When you do that, that's been on par.
I'm sorry, but the lesbian in Statue of Liberty drag smoking a blunt just told the White House to get their shit together and stop pinkwashing. Based in Chappell. Discussing the invite in her interview with Rolling Stone, she told Brittany Spanos that she had something way worse planned.
She was originally going to say yes, show up, and then refuse to perform. Instead, she would protest with some poetry.
I had picked out some poems from Palestinian women,
she says.
I was trying to do it as tastefully as I could because all I wanted to do was yell. I had to find something that's tasteful and to the point and meaningful and not make it about me and how I feel. I don't know if I'll ever get that close and direct sight of the president ever in my life. This is my shot.
She talked it through with her publicist, who was supportive, but made a point.
You with the president and the government, your security is not the same, and neither is your family's.
Chappell has been pretty transparent from the beginning that her family's safety is paramount to her. She's discussed this before. She's made it clear now that she wasn't willing to gamble with it for what would ultimately just amount to a speech that fell on unlistening ears. I don't think her carrying through with that idea would have ended well for her, honestly. I think not performing at all was the appropriate move, and rightly did not center her in discussions of Palestine. Many people would probably find it an honor to perform for the White House, thinking it would offer a degree of prestige and an elevation of their status, but that doesn't seem to have been a concern for her.
No matter how you say it, people are still going to be pissed for fucking some reason. I'm not going to go to the White House because I'm not going to be a monkey for pride.
Shortly after Chappell declined to go, the Biden administration outright said that it believed all gender-affirming surgeries should be limited to adults. What is an adult? Nobody knows. Speaking to Rolling Stone, Chappell said of this development,
Thank God I didn't go because they just made a huge statement about trans kids a couple weeks ago.
Later, the Democrats would kind of retract this in a clarification that came after intense pressure from the LGBTQ+ community, in which they said they would not legally restrict any surgeries, but believe that gender-affirming surgeries are typically reserved for adults, and we believe they should be. Many were still left confused by their clarification. So now that you know what kind of person Chappell Roan is, as much as we can know a person while not knowing her, maybe we can begin to discuss her like she is in fact a person, and not a product, not an object, not something we decide how to use and play with as we choose, not a commodity that we are entitled to. Because that's what this is. Entitlement. There's a big, throbbing vein that runs through all of the discourse around Chappell Roan and fame in general, and it's coursing with entitlement. One of the biggest issues with this controversy is that everything Chappell says has been misquoted, clipped, and removed from its context, and outright lied about. Almost every single argument against her comes down to, this thing that she didn't say makes me violently irate, and she should be punished for it, don't you think? Which, I don't know if anyone's noticed a trend, but this happens to women in the public eye, like, quite a lot. It's like Gamergate, but with more lesbians. Gay Girlgate. So in this essay, let's look at her words, unedited, and break them down.
I need you to answer questions. Just answer my questions for a second. If you saw a random woman on the street, would you yell at her from the car window? Would you harass her in public? Would you go up to a random lady and say, can I get a photo with you? And she's like, no, what the f-? And then you get mad at this random lady? Would you be offended if she says no to your time because she has her own time? Would you stalk her family? Would you follow her around? Would you try to dissect her life and bully her online? This is a lady you don't know. And she doesn't know you at all. Would you assume that she's a good person? Assume she's a bad person? Would you assume everything you read about her online is true? I'm a random You're a random Just think about that for a second, okay? I don't care that abuse and harassment, stalking, whatever, is a normal thing to do to people who are famous or a little famous, whatever. I don't care that it's normal. I don't care that this crazy type of behavior comes along with the job, the career field I've chosen. That does not make it okay. That doesn't make it normal. It doesn't mean I want it. It doesn't mean that I like it. I don't want whatever the fuck you think you're supposed to be entitled to whenever you see a celebrity. I don't give a fuck if you think it's selfish of me to say no for a photo or for your time or for a hug. That's not normal. That's weird. It's weird how people think that you know a person just because you see them online or you listen to the art they make. That's fucking weird. I'm allowed to say no to creepy behavior, okay?
Here are the points made in these videos. It is not cool to be angry at women you don't know for not agreeing to take photos with you, stalk her family, stalk her, bully her, make assumptions, and believe everything you hear about her. She is a random bitch. You are also a random bitch. Stalking and harassment of women in a specific career being normalized does not make it okay. You cannot assume she wants it because she's famous, or a little famous. Parasocial attachments that lead to you believing you know someone are weird. She is allowed to say no. To me, Every single one of these things is perfectly reasonable. But the worst thing you can do on the internet is say something reasonable.
She doesn't know being famous comes with lots of sacrifices.
Welcome to being famous. That's the downside of having a net worth in the millions. Seems like a fair trade to me. I don't know.
You have to pay for your fame. It doesn't come for free.
Not saying it isn't weird, but that's just what it is. She wanted to be famous. She knew what it would come with. You made your bed. Now lay in it.
This has 27 Club written all over her face and those sunken dead eyes.
You can't outrun bullets. I'm her concert. Oh my God, not this again. That's your job, sweetie. Is it gonna kill these celebrities to just take the photo or hug a fan?
It might. It has.
Investigators are trying to understand why a heavily armed man opened fire on a young pop star just as she finished what would become her final performance.
On June 10th, 2016, Christina Grimmie, musician and YouTuber, performed at the Plaza Live in Orlando, and after did a meet and greet with her fans. When 27-year-old James Loibel approached her, she opened her arms to give him the hug he had asked for. He pulled out his gun and shot her 3 times before backing against a wall and ending his own life. The venue had security. It was supposed to be a controlled environment. This is the safest place this kind of interaction could take place. And Christina Grimmie bled out on its floor, a bullet in her head and 2 in her chest. Kevin James Loibel was considered a fan. In a society where boundaries are consistently violated, sometimes in violent ways, Chappell decided to communicate her boundaries. If you're a fan and you want to have a positive interaction with her, do not, as a stranger, approach her and touch her. Do not follow her. And whatever you do, do not scream out of a car window at the small town lesbian as you drive by her. Jesus. I can tell you right now, if somebody's screaming at me at a car window, I'm assuming I'm probably about to get a little staycation in the emergency room. That one's wild to me. Like, I cannot imagine seeing a gay person I don't know well in a car and being like, I should scream out the window at them. And like, she barely even told people not to do these things. What she mostly said is, it's weird that you get mad when she says no to it. And if you decide to get pissed that she said no, she's just giving you that energy back. I honestly believe she'd fight you. I mean this in the most complimentary way possible. This girlie rolls onto TikTok first thing in the morning as a crusty-eyed lesbian drag queen who also shows up on the red carpet in chainmail. She will tell you off. She does not present herself as a demure, polished, perfect pop diva, and she's not marketing herself for consumption by men. She's just being herself, regardless of how much that pisses people off. And good for her. That's an amazing role model for young people, women, and lesbians. Andre Gide says, "It is better to be hated for what you are than to be loved for what you're not." While it's true that her music may be pop, Chappell Roan's ethos and vibe is punk as hell. On the red carpet at the VMAs, when Chappell's assistant Genesis is trying to fix her tangled clothing, a paparazzo that had reportedly been amped up all night starts impatiently yelling directions out that needs her to turn to face him. Her publicist asks him to be quiet, and he yells, "Shut the f*** up, she just missed her spot." Chappell's publicist tells him to stop, which Chappell hears and then turns to him to say, and then other photographers start cheering in her defense, one calling out, "You tell him, girl." Celebrity award shows are usually an opulent celebration of wealthy people, and I'm not a fan. If I was the Joker, I'd probably hit him with that laffy gassy and rob these mind. But it is still a place where most of the people there are working. If you get upset that someone is making your job more difficult, the appropriate workplace response most likely isn't starting with screaming at them. But once again, the narrative spun after a woman gives back the same energy a man has just put out is that she's a nasty bitch who should be grateful.
She's been famous for like 5 seconds and thinks that allows her to talk to people any way she wants. Ew.
Oh, the fame getting to her head.
It's giving Carrion low-key.
So disrespectful.
Attention seeker.
Got what she deserved.
She got what she deserved. Let's talk about what she's got thrown at her in the past few months, and whether she deserved it. And this is not including the harassment from all of these people online.
They think I'm complaining about my success. I'm complaining about being abused.
There are events that have happened to Chappell that may seem simply inconvenient to people who haven't experienced it. Like how one day when Chappell and her girlfriend at the time were having a quiet but intensely personal argument, Chappell was clearly distressed, and a fan approached her and asked her to pose for a photo. This is the kind of thing that would not be pleasant. It would not make you think that they were a fan of yours. I can see how in that moment you'd feel more like a prop than a person. This kind of interaction is something she was dealing with, but things escalated dramatically. If someone is setting boundaries, saying, please stop stalking me, it's because it's already at that point where things have become dangerous. Stalking is a violent crime that can destroy your life, leave you terrified, and isolate you. But with celebrities, people don't see it as stalking. Stalking is what you do to real people, not musicians who owe everything to their fans. If they didn't want to be followed around, they wouldn't have started making music I like, would they? Today, it's completely normalized to follow artists around and harass them. There's an entire profession dedicated to it. People have started to follow her everywhere. She says they know where her parents live, have showed up at her sister's work, and Chappell herself has a stalker that has escalated in a terrifying way. This person, whom she first encountered in Missouri, has been stalking her across the country, from showing up at her parents' house to finding their way up to her hotel room door in New York City. On top of this, when Chappell was flying to Seattle this July, her flight information was leaked by fans who ambushed her at the airport. She has spoken about a particular man who at that airport screamed at her for not giving him an autograph, and it got so bad the airport police had to intervene. And then later, when she got back to LA, that very same man was waiting for her at LAX. Right before these videos came out, she was celebrating with a friend for their birthday when a fan at the bar grabbed hold of her and sexually assaulted her.
I got home and dropped to my knees. I have a hard time crying now because of my meds, but I sobbed and was screaming.
It's gotten so bad she has had to hire security, something she never wanted to do. And contrary to popular belief, the constant reminder that you're not safe, not comforting. That same night that she was assaulted, her father's number was leaked online, and the calls started coming in. This, and everything leading up to it, was what led to her posting the videos asking fans to respect her boundaries. And for that, she was painted as a stuck-up, entitled, selfish bitch. And you know what? She is entitled, rightfully so, to not being f***ing sexually assaulted, to being treated as a person, to determining her own boundaries. I'll let her words speak for themselves.
I don't want to be agoraphobic. That's how most of my peers feel. Every fucking artist is on this page. Everyone is uncomfortable with fans. Some people just have more patience. I fucking don't. If you're still asking, well, if you didn't want this to happen, then why did you choose a career where you knew you wouldn't be comfortable with the outcome of success? Understand this. I embrace the success of the project, the love I feel, and the gratitude I have. What I do not accept are creepy people being touched and being followed. It is not the woman's duty to suck it up and take it. It is the harasser's duty to be a decent person, leave her alone, and respect that she can wear whatever she wants and still deserve peace in this world.
Other artists like Billie Eilish, Muna, Gaga, and Julian Baker have all reached out to her or met up with her to commiserate. Mitski sent her an email to say,
I just wanted to humbly welcome you to the shittiest exclusive club in the world, the club where strangers think you belong to them, and they find and harass your family members.
Alanis Morissette said,
I think about Chappell Roan right now. I think about these women who are just in it. I'm here. If they ever wanted to text me at 4 a.m.
For years, people have felt entitled to the artists they love, who make the art they love. But what people are missing is that Chappell wasn't unaware of this. People asking, what did she think would happen, are missing the point. She's not naive. She just rejects that it must be this way. She's pushing back against the narrative that to be an artist, you no longer get to be a person. She is saying that artists are entitled to peace, safety, and autonomy, that the arrogance apparent in treating other people like objects you are entitled to, that's never okay, even if they're a well-known artist. And she's right. I mean, once an artist gets to that billionaire hoarding wealth status, we can have another talk about their safety. This sense of entitlement, it didn't come from nowhere. It's not new. It is a byproduct of what happens when capitalism gets its teeth into art. Art under capitalism is treated not as an expression of humanity, but as a commodity produced for consumption. Though the art used to be the main product being sold, with the ever-rising trend of online parasociality, the artists themselves are increasingly becoming the object you consume as well. We expect more and more access to their lives and inner dialogue. We want to know the artist as part of experiencing the art. And as this dynamic changes and becomes the norm, the art itself has begun to change alongside it. As Professor of Journalism Dr. Marina Vojinovic explains it,
more than ever, once separate spheres of culture and commerce now overlap, and in return, culture and the way of life in a hyper-capitalist society becomes subsumed by the commercial sphere. This is how hyper-capitalism works, which Marxist scholars use to describe a relatively new form of capitalistic social organization marked by the speed and intensity of global flows that include exchange of both material and immaterial goods, people, and information.
This is all especially true when it concerns pop music, the real top 40 shit, the kind of pop that is traditionally marketed for mass consumption, manufactured and sold from the top down by record labels to fit a niche they think has both room and potential to generate cash, growth. The kind of pop that's part of what Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer called the culture industry. They argue that pop culture is like a factory producing standardized cultural goods that are used to manipulate mass society into passivity. Consumption of the easy pleasures of popular culture, made available by the mass communications media, renders people docile and content, no matter how difficult their economic circumstances. This is a big part of why the pop girls are expected to be safe enough to be consumed by nearly everyone. But the label that originally signed Chappell didn't know what to do with her and dropped her after only a year. It wasn't until later, through her marketing herself authentically on TikTok as a lesbian drag queen with an astoundingly loud personality, that fame found her waiting. Is Chappell Roan a pop star now? Yes. But unlike many other pop stars, she has manufactured her own image, ground up, directly in opposition to what a management team would likely advise. She is loud, unapologetic, real, without airbrushing out her personality or politics. She is a proud lesbian, a trans ally, and someone who challenges the status quo, regardless of whether it comes with backlash. You know, she's on that queer shit. I'm sure there are plenty of people who want to be pop stars and pursue music in service of fame, but Chappell has been clear from the start that her aspirations are to create art, to have it be seen, and celebrity is just a byproduct of that. And with that celebrity, people claim certain hardships not only do come baked in, that they should come baked in, that this is the price of fame. And fame, because it's so desired and elevated, should come at a heavy price. This is a sentiment expressed on the casting couch of many men who should be ground into chum and thrown into the ocean. And it's one that Chappell herself has frequently pushed back against. And yes, she has a reason we can point to, say, isn't this bad? We can at least agree sexual assault by a fan is too far, right? But we shouldn't have to. It shouldn't take a woman being sexually assaulted for us to agree she deserves to dictate when she's being touched, photographed, or accosted by complete strangers. Going back to this idea of the culture industry and pop culture as a commodity for consumption, the entitlement in fan culture is often steeped in seeing art, and by extension people who make that art, as a product. A person is reduced to entertainment. A product that in 2024, they really don't even need to purchase to ravenously consume with streaming. A product they can evangelize and promote to others. A product they have expectations for and feel righteous in providing feedback on. And to be fair to these people, this is the type of consumer behavior that is often sought after in the pursuit of financial success. But it's still dehumanizing to experience as a person. I have experienced 1/1000th of this, and it's left me feeling used, degraded, and disillusioned. When we hear people talk about fan service in both the pandering and positive versions, this is a direct acknowledgement of this entitlement. As fans and consumers of art, we have the right to have opinions and voice them, engage in artistic criticism and analysis, discuss the people who are making it, and hopefully we do that from a place of passion and joy. Unless it's one of my reactions to Christian movies or Darin or something. in which case, no. While online spaces have been vital in allowing this kind of fandom and community to flourish, it's also a place where things can, and often, or always do, get taken way too far. Let's be honest. For most people, supporting a music artist materially looks like a couple of cents a month from their Spotify subscription. And for that, people think they deserve to cross boundaries and consume someone like a product. People think that an artist should just come to accept that behavior from others. And this expectation translates to more of their mind and body, more of their time being dedicated to labor. More and more labor. But haven't they put in the work? Because for most artists, the labor starts long before any form of compensation or recognition of its value. You hone a craft over thousands of hours, over years and decades, especially with a pursuit like music. There's also a financial investment in the form of lessons, instruments, gear, traveling, but there's an even bigger investment, time. It takes a lot of time to just become musically competent, let alone develop your own style, voice, and way of playing, let alone the time it takes to write the songs that take all of this investment and then channel it into something artistically expressive, a story, an experience, an emotion, an idea. It's a lot of hard work, and any artist will tell you that it's done as a labor of love. And with all this, they're also the first to realize that although artists should be compensated, they aren't entitled to it in the form of people liking it or supporting it. They often don't even expect anything for it. They do it because they want or need to create art. But in the sphere of pop culture, if something hits, then that's a market. There's money to be made, profit margins to optimize. And if you're the artist getting this spotlight, you should just be excited that people even know or care who you are. And with that knowledge, any authentic aspects that remain intact are most often left that way because they're aligned with and serving some overall marketing and branding purpose. The problem is that people expect artists like Chappell to not just make a commercially safe and consumable pop culture product, but to be one. To act like someone who could cause no real offense. But many queer artists like Chappell Roan, they care more about the art than the demand that it be safe and palatable and for you. And there's little that people hate more than a woman who doesn't appreciate whatever attention society has decided is appropriate, especially if they're uncompromising and marginalized. Just because this is the way it's been does not mean it is the way it should be, the way it has to be. Nobody should be expected to give up autonomy and boundaries for their livelihood. Nobody. There's no leftist position that supports the cost of selling the art you've created with love and labor is that you no longer deserve privacy, safety, and self-determination. That if a woman wants to sing, the cost must be her voice. Sit pretty, dance pretty, sing pretty, and shut your mouth. Shut up and sing. In 2003, when the country band, formerly known as the Dixie Chicks, criticized George W. Bush, saying they were ashamed of being from the same state as him, coming out against the coming invasion of Iraq, the uproar was immediate and extreme. If you weren't there to watch as they were blacklisted, it's challenging to believe. They were sent death threats and expunged in a way that would slap the grin from Ellen DeGeneres' face so fast. Days later, Natalie Maines issued an apology, which she very bastely took back in 2006, saying, "I don't feel George W. Bush is owed any respect whatsoever." Their next album, Shut Up and Sing, and single Not Ready to Make Nice, broke records in 2006 as the band publicly owned their dissension among country stars, willing to speak out when many were not, for fear of alienating fans. Stereotypically, there are a lot of Republican alpha MAGA hard men listening to country, and the silly Democrat betas and whatever they're calling women now listen to airy, unintellectual music like pop. And Chappell, much like the Chicks, has voiced an unspoken belief held by a lot of artists in their sphere. Because criticizing the party you're meant to support without question, apparently there's no worse crime. I'm going to test a theory here. I'm going to say a bunch of things that people attacking Chappell Roan have said that if she had said it, they wouldn't have been attacking her. And then we're going to see if I get the same comments as she did. Everything I'm going to say is absolutely my opinion. It's just that to me, a lot of it seems to go without saying for someone on the left. Let's say it anyway for those in the back of the class who haven't been paying attention though. Donald J. Trump is a fascist. His party is a party of fascists. Their goal? Fascism. And countless other isms. Racism, ableism, sexism, classism, and all the phobias you could even muster. If you're marginalized in America, the Republican-devised Project 2025 will be one of the most antagonistic and dangerous sets of policies. And for the Americans who are trans, especially youth, those policies will be deadly. Republican policies are already deadly. It's undeniable that the future of reproductive rights will be decided by how Americans vote in November. Right now, reproductive rights and bodily autonomy are already under attack across America. Since Donald Trump's hand-picked Supreme Court justices overturned Roe v. Wade, over 20 states have implemented extreme abortion bans, some bans starting before people even know that they are pregnant. Since Roe v. Wade was overturned, millions of Americans have suffered in service of an anti-science extremist agenda. The state of reproductive freedom in America right now is bleak. But if Donald Trump ends up back in office, it's about to get a whole lot worse, especially if everything in Trump's Project 2025 were to be implemented. Like banning abortion nationwide without exceptions and ending access to emergency abortion care, defunding Planned Parenthood and building a nanny state to track women, pregnant people, and healthcare workers, possibly prosecuting them even if they suffer an unwanted miscarriage. Establishing a fetal personhood, meaning that legally life would begin at conception, which gives a fetus the same, if not more, rights than a living person. On top of that, access to in vitro fertilization and contraception are also at risk, and that's just in regard to reproductive rights. As of writing this, abortion bans have already killed multiple women. Amber Thurman, a 28-year-old mother, died in Georgia after life-saving care was delayed for approximately 20 hours. Georgia's Maternal Mortality Review Committee found that Amber Thurman's death was preventable and likely caused by the delay in care she experienced at the hospital. Amber Thurman died because doctors had to wait until she was sick enough to give life-saving care under Georgia's extreme abortion ban. And hers is not the only tragic story. Donald Trump and the Republicans will, without question, continue to erode and destroy reproductive health care and women's rights. They have and will continue to pass laws that risk Americans' lives. This is undoubtedly one of the reasons Chappell Roan has encouraged Americans to vote, including voting for local representatives, and why she has said she is voting for Kamala Harris, despite disagreeing with her on some issues. She explains that it is important to use critical thinking, look at the candidates running and their platforms, put your vote where it can protect those who are most at risk. And that's beyond reasonable to say. That's what most leftists are doing and have been promoting to work within the current system, to safeguard America's immediate future against an overt fascist. If you're an American, I'd say this is what you should be doing too. But, of course, it's not the only thing you should be doing. Direct action, volunteering, protesting, getting involved with local organizations that focus on mutual aid in your area, creating community with those who have the same goals as you do, unionizing at work, creating tenant unions. These are all things that have tangible and lasting benefits. When your local school board has a meeting on banning teachers from discussing, I don't know, gay parents, let's say, that's something you should attend and protest. I believe it can be argued that if focusing directly on America's domestic policies as someone on the left, Kamala Harris is a better option to some degree, no matter how small, than Trump on pretty much every issue. And still, when Chappell Roan said it would be inauthentic for her to put her name and projects behind Kamala Harris, I said, same. I would never put my name behind any candidate who I felt was expecting me to vote for them because the other guy is worse. That's not a good enough reason for me, especially when some of the policies I'd be endorsing are ones I oppose as strongly as I do, like Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's positions on Israel. A vote is a different story. An endorsement, I don't think so. And that's Chappell's position as well, that as long as Kamala Harris's policies endorse Israel's right to slaughter tens to hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children indiscriminately and without recourse, she will not stand behind her and say, I endorse this. She will, however, vote for her in the election and publicly state that she will, because she is deeply concerned for LGBTQ+ rights, and she encourages people to think critically and vote for more than just the presidential candidate, whom she has also said is historically important, being the first woman of color to run.
I have encouraged people to use critical thinking skills, learn about what they're voting for, learn about who they're voting for, and ask questions. and it's being completely taken out of context, per usual. There is nuance to what I say in interviews, and I think it's important that people use critical thinking. I think it's important for me to question authority and question world leaders and question myself, question my algorithm, question if some person that tweeted something about someone else is even true. It's important to question because that's how I think we move forward. This is my third election in voting, and the world is changing so rapidly, and I want to be part of the generation that changes things for good because we need it. Actions speak louder than words, and actions speak louder than an endorsement. Here's the full quote that a lot of people are just not reading. I have so many issues with our government in every way, she says. There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressure to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides, and I encourage people to use your critical thinking skills. Use your vote. Vote small. Vote for what's going on in your city. The change she wants to see in the US is this election year, she says, instantly is trans rights. They cannot have cis people making decisions for trans people, period. So, hear it from my mouth, if you're still wondering. No, I'm not voting for Trump. And yes, I will always question those in power and those making decisions over other people. And I will stand up for what's right and what I believe in. It's always at the forefront of my project. And I'm sorry that you fell for the clickbait. I just woke up, and to like people just skewing it even more. Endorsing and voting are completely different. I don't agree with a lot of what is going on with like policies. Like obviously policies of the right, but also the policies on the left. That's why I can't endorse. That's why I can't like put my entire name and my entire project behind one, because there is no way I can stand behind some of the left's completely transphobic and completely genocidal views. So yeah, there are huge problems on both. You know what is right and wrong, and so do I. Trump for real, but the shit that has gone down in the Democratic Party that has failed people like me and you. And more so, Palestine. And more so, every marginalized community in the world. I'm not gonna settle for what the options that are in front of me. And you're not gonna make me feel bad for that. So yeah, I'm voting for Kamala, but I'm not settling for what has been offered because that's questionable. It's questionable that our actions of our government, the actions of the internet, the actions of you and me. If this is what you are not understanding, you know what? Endorsing someone, if someone is publicly endorsing a political figure, that doesn't even mean that they're gonna for them. Because as I said in my other video, actions speak louder than words. And I'm not gonna let this narrative like me not playing both sides. No. This is not me playing both sides. This is me questioning both sides because this is what we have in front of us. So if you look at my statement and you're still like, she's just playing both sides, like she doesn't wanna, no, you're not getting it. I'm critiquing both sides because they're both so up. Voting is all we have right now in the system. And so I encourage it, yet again, vote for who in your mind is the best option for what we have right now. Because that's all we can do. And I hope this makes it clear that no, I'm not picking the sides of what we have right now. Yes, one's obviously better than the other. But Jesus Christ, I hope you don't settle for what we have and put your name behind someone that you don't fully trust because of their blatant actions.
And here's a completely unreasonable response to that. I heard you said the Democratic Party was imperfect. Just wondering when you decided to become a Republican MAGA piece of shit who hates freedom and democracy and a woman's right to choose to support a genocide. That was a straw man. Well, it's definitely someone's opinion, but I did get snarky with it. Because that's how you sound. You're trying to gaslight us into thinking you gatekeeping queerness so you can girl bossify a prosecutor and pro-genocide politician is somehow leftist. And it's ridiculous. The argument that there's only two positions, you're either for Kamala's policies or you're for Trump's policies, is so asinine and childish. And even worse, it's incredibly prevalent among those piping up in this conversation. There were so many people claiming Chappell Roan was actually just a secret Republican, so I'll stop straw manning and just let them embarrass themselves. Let's put the people's Midwest princess on trial. We'll line up all the evidence like Kamala would have as a prosecutor and see if we can prove that this lesbian drag queen here is a MAGA, red or dead, Trump-supporting fake from the South. I'm a bit of a trad, Kathy, so I always say, if we're gonna burn a witch, we should at least do it the way our ancestors did. Salem style. So, seeing how this is the internet and a witch trial, the court is going to conduct itself a little differently. For starters, the judge, Set Moy, is also the jury, and the prosecutors, Set Toy, are also the accusers. Chappell Roan has rudely refused to attend her trial, real diva behavior, so we've strapped a cardboard cutout to a pyre. Stenny, are you ready? Okay. I'm good. Chappell Roan, you have been accused of being a Republican and a fake-ass lesbian. How do you plead? Her silence is sour-telling. Okay, then we'll go right to Exhibit A. Chappell Roan has an uncle who is a Republican. Sorry, let me try that one again. Yeah. That one was better. Okay, let's begin.
I suspect Chappell Roan is hesitant about openly bashing Republicans because her uncle is one. May I introduce you to Missouri State Representative Darin Chappell, R. Crazy world we live in.
Chappell Roan. I'm just an uber small bean who loves her conservative family. The conservative family. Uncle who is a transphobic Republican state legislator.
Missouri State Representative Darin Chappell, R., is Roan Chappell's uncle. Marcellus Williams was executed because of Missouri GOP legislative policy. She has smoke for both sides because her family is literally the problem. Both sides is just a tactic to enable the GOP.
Yeah, same, agreed. I hate that rat, Rowan Chappell's. And the uncle she apparently controls from under his MAGA hat, like that little animated French who controlled that soup twink. But you're right, that the state's murder of Marcellus Williams is horrific and unconscionable. Chappell has spoken out against this, before you did, by the way. But also, the Democrats have recently removed opposition to the death penalty from their platform for the first time in 20 years. And while 5 men were executed in a week, Kamala Harris has done nothing about it, said nothing on it. She has done less for Marcellus Williams than both Roan Chappell and Chappell Roan. But sure, from NYC is aghast at Chappell's roams for it.
Chappell's Rome's home state executed an innocent man.
Chappell Roan and Jill Stein failed Marcellus Williams.
Republican politician. Her uncle is an elected official. He is the one taking away the rights of LGBTQ people in her home state. If it was me, I'd probably be protecting my community from my demon uncle instead of trying to convince people both sides are the same.
What's she supposed to do to him? Kill him? How does one protect the state from their uncle? Wait, no, I've answered this one before.
I'd also like to point out that Chappell's uncle is a Republican politician in Missouri, for those of you who don't know.
Oh my god, an American woman is related to a Republican man? Should we gather the villagers? Should we burn her at the stake? Should we call Matthew Hopkins? Answer carefully though, Anne Boleyn fan account, because you'd be burning too.
My dad is a Republican and my mom is a die-hard Democrat. My father's 70th birthday is today, and I made my mother promise to not talk politics and be sweet to my daddy.
So, I think it's pretty clear that the woman who wants the Democrats to move left, who says F Trump, is not voting for her Republican uncle, nor has she endorsed him. So somehow trying to pin the actions of this middle-aged man on his, sister's daughter is weird as hell. it's reaching. Basically, only one of these tweets had any substance to it, and it's this super annoying and terminally online one. In Chappell's Rolling Stone article, she discusses a common disparity between small-town gays and city gays.
Roan carries more empathy for her conservative relatives and friends back home than people on the coast sometimes understand.
I have family that are very Republican, and they love me, and I love them. It's so hard for kids who grew up on the coast to understand why maybe I can understand. And I understand all of it that was in me came from fear, because I just didn't know.
So, yeah, I can kind of see why people would take issue with this statement. It can easily be interpreted as a statement of support for some of her Republican family members, and maybe even all of them, though that's a stretch. She did not say that. Here's kind of a radical thing to say. I think having empathy and love for people who vote against your rights is not a moral failing. Nor is it an indication you agree with their abhorrent beliefs. And people very frequently state that they love family they not only don't like, but cannot stand to be around. There's that kind of love where you'd give someone your last dollar, but you'd also tell them they're f***ing out most of the time. When everyone you knew is indoctrinated by the conservative, Christian, Midwestern, small-town echo chamber that you grew up in and you've gotten out, I think it can be, not is, but can be kind of conservative and reactionary to think these people are all a write-off. And you shouldn't even try to change their minds from a place of love and empathy. You obviously shouldn't have to, but it's not wrong to try. I know empathy is one of the words Elon Musk banned from Twitter, like cis, but to say that she has to not only reject her family's beliefs, but also find a way to stop her brain from feeling love for them is a little bit much, no? I don't know. You can definitely have that opinion, and in some cases, I'd probably say I feel that way too. She hasn't come out and said, I love Unky Darin, and could have easily been talking about her parents and cousins or something in that interview. But I will say, this is a totally valid subject to discuss, how we deal with family who vote against us and who are ideologically dangerous to us. There are people I've cut out because they would not stop spewing right-wing dog whistles in my direction. But is her saying that she has empathy and love for some people who are Republicans evidence that she is herself a Republican, or that it has influenced why she won't endorse Kamala despite voting for her? No, it's not. It is not, I support all the policies of Kamala, and if I don't, then I support all the policies of Trump. The political spectrum isn't a binary switch between Democrat and Republican, and being left of the liberals does not make one a right-wing psyop. On the count of guilty by association, we find the defendant not guilty at all. Yeah, Dave Chappelle. What? I don't know. You were screaming about Dave Chappelle, so I was just giving you the attention you wanted. Edgeball. Moving on to Exhibit B. Chappell Roan. By refusing to endorse Kamala Harris, you are proving yourself to be a Republican. What say ye? Let the record show that Chappell Roan has refused to answer. The following are replies to a tweet saying that Chappell Roan would not endorse a presidential candidate in 2024.
She's starting to get annoying because we get it, bro. She could just shut up and not vote, but she keeps speaking on it, discouraging her fans from voting when there's a clear worse option here. If Trump wins, she's going to regret not voting for Kamala.
I mean, she said she's voting for Kamala and encouraged her fans to vote, said there was a clear worse option, and said F Trump. But you're gonna go off, I guess.
She's a Republican, lol.
She's Republicans from the Midwest.
Oh, she endorsing Trump? Not surprised.
She's conservative.
You get the picture. Time out for a second, and let me get a little personal. You might be surprised to learn this about me, but I love men. F-A-G-G. I love men. Most men. Almost all men. I don't discriminate. Unless they're hateful little shits. Which, speaking of, let's talk about Zeke Taylor. One of the most viral responses to Chappell's videos on why she is voting for but will not endorse Kamala Harris was posted and filmed by Zeke Taylor. If you boil down the concept of mansplaining into a burnt reactionary reduction, that would be Zeke. And I'm sorry, I don't know if he's a homo, but he's definitely not gay enough to pull off whatever snark he's trying to do here. Let's watch. Content warning, if you've ever been talked down to by a white dude sitting in front of a bunch of irrelevant degrees, you're probably gonna find it a little bit difficult to make it through this TikTok. But stick with it, because I'll make it worth your while at the end.
I just woke up.
Well, good morning.
Obviously, policies of the right.
All right, we're on the same page on that one.
But also, policies on the left.
Oh, now you lost me.
That's why I can't, put my entire name and my entire project behind one.
I mean, that's kind of how voting works right now in America.
So, yeah, I'm voting for Kamala.
All right, we're back on the same page. It's pronounced Kamala, though.
You know what? Endorsing someone, if someone is publicly endorsing a political figure, that doesn't even mean that they're gonna vote for them.
I mean, what's the strategy behind that? I mean, after the primaries, I don't think that's a thing. I don't think there's any benefit to a corporation or person endorsing a candidate in a general election and not actually doing it. So you're losing me again.
No. This is not me playing both sides.
Sure about that?
I'm critiquing both sides because they're both so up.
Yep, sounds like you're playing both sides.
Voting is all we have right now in the system.
I mean, that kind of is the system of democracy, but yeah, there's a lot more you could do in between elections.
I encourage it, yet again, vote for who, in your mind, is the best option for what we have right now.
Yeah, Kamala Harris is definitely our best option right now, as well as all the Democrats up and down the ballot.
And I hope this makes it clear that no, I'm not picking the sides of what we have right now.
I mean, it kind of sounds like you've picked a side in terms of voting for Kamala Harris, but you just don't know much about the rest of the Democratic platform. But you can certainly read it. It's online.
Yes, one's obviously better than the other.
All right, we're kind of getting back on the same page again.
But Jesus Christ.
Oh boy.
I hope you don't settle for what we have and put your name behind someone that you don't fully trust.
I fully trust that Kamala Harris and all the Democrats up and down the ballot are going to protect democracy and make this country a better place.
I hate him. He's like if Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh combined their DNA in a gruesome science experiment to create this horrible abomination that rebelled against their obnoxious, washed-up flop dads by becoming somehow more condescending and annoying than both of them combined. So, dickweed. May I call you that? Honestly, dickweed is probably too nice. Those are two of my favorite things. Okay. Zeke, we're gonna have a little conversation your way where you have no chance to respond and I never once speak to you like you're not a stupid little girl with shit for brains.
But also, some of the policies on the left.
Oh, now you lost me.
That's because you hold unquestioning and unwavering support for the center-right liberals because you yourself are a center-right liberal.
That's why I can't, put my entire name and my entire project behind one.
I mean, that's kind of how voting works right now in America.
So, voting actually isn't when an artist publicly puts her name and project behind a candidate. That's called an endorsement. Voting is when you, vote.
Endorsing someone? If someone is publicly endorsing a political figure, that doesn't even mean that they're gonna vote for them.
I mean, what's the strategy behind that? I mean, after the primaries, I don't think that's a thing.
Well, that's because almost nobody in the world has any idea who you are, so they don't really value your opinion, you know? You don't have the political pressures that artists do to speak up and support a candidate because you're not an artist. You don't, create, you criticize. If you cannot conceive that a celebrity might publicly endorse a party due to pressure from the fans while potentially voting for another, you can't really expect us to think you've thought this through enough for anyone to take you seriously. And this is something I replied to your tweet with, which you then hid. So nobody could see that you were talking out of your ass.
I'm not picking the sides of what we have right now.
I mean, it kind of sounds like you've picked a side in terms of voting for Kamala Harris, but you just don't know much about the rest of the Democratic platform. But you can certainly read it. It's online.
Once again, this entire conversation is about an endorsement.
Yes, one's obviously better than the other.
All right, we're kind of getting back on the same page again.
But Jesus
Oh boy.
Oh no. A woman swearing. Does that alarm you, Zeke? Does it make you uncomfortable? Maybe examine that. Notably absent from his reaction to her videos is that he removed all talk of why she holds this position which is almost entirely down to the administration's position on Israel. And if you scroll through the replies to his tweet, you'll notice a surprising lack of criticism of this fact. That's because Zeke, who wants an administration that is dedicated to standing with Israel as it defends itself against the barbaric war launched by Hamas and other terrorists, has hid the replies that point out that he is an unapologetic and condescending Zionist. Let's look at what Zeke didn't want people to see.
Just because you've pledged your blind loyalty to the Democratic Party doesn't mean that we have to. Our votes do not inherently belong to them. Kamala Harris needs to stop supporting this genocide, or she will need to win without our votes. Check your privilege, Zeke.
Nice dunk. What are your thoughts on the Palestinian genocide?
Hey, Zeke, what about this part where she mentions Palestine?
Cute degrees you got there. Are any of them in political science?
Got her. She got her.
You are such a loser with your smug, condescending ass tone, cutting out parts of the video where she's clearly explaining her main issue is their support for the genocide in Palestine to make her seem less coherent.
Shocking. Absolutely no one, the Zionist shill, has decided to present her very reasonable concerns as something nonsensical, because God forbid someone vote for a Democrat while also acknowledging that there should be better choices than what we have.
Warm take, but I don't think people without platforms necessarily understand the weight of an endorsement. Maybe for them, it's as simple as saying, vote Kamala to their Facebook account, and then maybe being annoyed when Uncle Jerry calls them a Satanist. But when a very vocally political artist or celebrity endorses a political candidate, they are using their position of influence and parasocial power on people who have seen their politics in the past and deemed them sound and ethical. They're tugging on the trust these people have developed based on seeing that this artist is someone who stands up for what they believe is right. An artist like Chappell giving an endorsement is not just her saying, vote for her. It's her saying, I approve of this candidate, as well as their platform, policies, likely their track record. It is to vouch for someone. It says, you can trust that this person believes in what I stand for, that their policies align with my values. And as my fans, you can trust that they align with your values too. And for Chappell Roan, that's not true. Kamala Harris has watched a genocide occur and has continued to repeat that sure, she wants the war to end, but that Israel has the right to defend itself, which in this case means the indiscriminate slaughter of what is now officially over 40,000 people as of mid-August, according to the UN. But other estimates say that the true death toll could be more than 186,000 people. Tim Walz, Harris's running mate, has advocated for the expansion of Israel. They are diametrically opposed to one of both the left and Chappell's most deeply held, loudly vocalized, and unwavering positions, something that matters to her so much she's willing to be relentlessly disparaged, attacked, and insulted by thousands of people. While you could argue that a good reason to vote for Kamala Harris is that Donald Trump is worse, it is not reasonable to say that the other guy is worse is justification for an endorsement. That's a justification for a condemnation of the other guy, the worst one, which he's done and will likely do again. On the count of Republican through refusal to endorse, we find the defendant principled as fuck. Chappell was right to say she couldn't in good conscience endorse Kamala and Walz, but the real question to ask yourself isn't should Chappell endorse Kamala, but why do you care? Why do the handful of non-Zionist critics care? And why do they have more smoke for the lady twink than for actual Republicans? Why do they expect more from a pop star than they do of the people elected to serve them? In my opinion, her statement actually helps the Democrats and Kamala. There are many people on the left who feel exactly like Chappell Roan does about Kamala Harris, and her publicly coming out and saying, fuck Trump, go vote, I'm voting for Kamala despite my issues with her platform, is literally the only kind of statement that might persuade people who feel like her. They already know Trump is bad, and wagging your little finger at them and repeating that isn't going to convince them. Chappell Roan saying hot to go to the polls isn't swaying anyone. What might convince them is seeing an incredibly principled person who shares their values publicly state their intention to vote with harm reduction in mind for Kamala Harris. In what world is that not promoting the exact talking point they need to reach undecided eligible voters who feel like she does about these issues? For f***ing sake. The problem isn't that she isn't endorsing Kamala Harris. The problem is that she acknowledged the flaws of her platform. And even more specifically, if you look at almost every tweet regarding her statement, it all comes down to 2 words. Truly, many people's entire issue with what she said, out of all the videos, interviews, and articles, is that she said 2 specific words in a specific order. On September 21st, the account PopFlopHQ on Twitter, known as X by men who think American Psycho is a lifestyle guide, twatted out this tweet, tagging her in it. It read,
Chappell Roan on why she hasn't endorsed Kamala Harris.
I have so many issues with our government in every way. There are so many things that I would want to change, so I don't feel pressured to endorse someone. There's problems on both sides.
Uh-oh. She did the thing. She shook Pavlov's bell and the dogs came out gnashing their teeth. She had the audacity to say the forbidden words. She said both and sides in succession.
String her up.
Oh, okay. Chappell Roan, first of her name, House of Colby, daughter of drag mother Sasha Colby. You have been accused of bothsidesing. How do you plead? Okay, you're really very close to that. Can you not? I can't not, no. But I can go home early, and I will. Can you punch my time card when you lock up? Can't afford to lose the hours. Okay, why don't we fire you? You can't. I'm union. That's fair, I guess. Hey, you're like made of clay, right? Oh my god, that's so cool. Do you want to hang out in my little wooden house? Can you take a bath or do you melt? Do you have a penis? Sorry, Nepo hire. Their father has a mustache, so I did what needed to be done. And I won't apologize, but I am very sorry. So on September 21st, when that pop flop tweet went out, the following was readily available to anyone who wanted to know Chappell's position on the election, as it had been extensively covered. Rolling Stone had reported that Chappell had said,
Right now, it's more important than ever to use your vote, and I will do whatever it takes to protect people's civil rights, especially the LGBTQ+ community. My ethics and values will always align with that, and that hasn't changed with a different nominee. I feel lucky to be alive during an incredibly historical time period when a woman of color is a presidential nominee.
Billboard had reported that Chappell Roan would be voting for Kamala in the election. But The Guardian had reported that she had also said, there's problems on both sides. And this is what Pop Flop was quoting from. And once again, the coconuts went coconuts.
Both sides? Okay, sure.
Would she tell me that the flu and terminal cancer are equally as bad too?
Between the cop who puts trans women in jail with men, awful, and Hitler 2.0 who wants to ban HRT altogether, there is an obviously morally correct choice here. Even just looking at the trans stuff alone.
Yeah, problems on both sides. Like sometimes I go 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, so clearly I'm on par with someone who purposefully ran over another person, right? That's how this works? Not even a single degree of nuance? Both are equally problematic, right? Right?
We literally cannot afford grace when our rights and well-being is on the ballot. We literally cannot afford Chappell Roan gaslighting us into thinking both sides are equally bad when one side literally wants us dead.
Yes, both sides. Like choosing between a room that gives you Pepsi instead of Coke and another room that will and murder your family or murder and then your family.
This makes me so angry. My 12-year-old granddaughter is a huge fan of Roan, yet Trump and his people would force her to give birth at 12 if she was raped, even if it was incest. I will let my granddaughter know that Roan is okay with this.
Jesus fucking Christ, Beth. Marching downstairs to go shake your granddaughter awake and be like, your favorite artist said she's chill with you being and forced to give birth, even if the baby is your father's. That's called incest. You can die, you know. That's what Chappell Roan wants. I'm calling CPS. So, the words both sides were used in this statement. This much is unambiguously true. People seem to think that means you are doing a both sidesism. Why do liberals and others recoil at the phrase both sides? Well, when certain people hear the phrase both sides have problems, they erroneously assume you must mean both sides are exactly the same in every way. Look at these tweets again. Almost all of the tweets that use the term both sides use equally as a qualifier. And the thesis of all the tweets are that one side is worse than the other. And why doesn't Chappell Roan know that? But that isn't arguing against Chappell's point, because she never said both sides are equally bad. In fact, everything she has said demonstrates that she doesn't think that. Why say she's going to vote for Kamala? Why say it's important to vote in general? Why say vote for the protections of LGBTQ+ people if neither party offers them? The truth is, you'd need to either be using zero critical thinking skills or completely disingenuous to hear both sides are the same when it was never even implied. She was not creating a false equivalency between the Democrats and the Republicans. But here's where I will criticize her for a false equivalency. In her videos, Chappell has referred to Kamala and the Democrats as the left, and Trump and the Republicans as the right. We all know that being to the left of Republicans on some issues does not make you the left, and Chappell equivocating them is straight up just incorrect. Like, I get it. This is a two-party system, and if you zoom in until you can see their pores, one would be to the left of the other. But no, when discussing American political parties, the Democrats are not on the left of the political spectrum, but of Republicans. Kind of. Sometimes. The issue I saw people on the actual left taking with her statement was widely just that, calling the Dems the left. But also that she had said some of the transphobic views of the left, which people balked at as well. Transphobia on the left? It's more likely than you might think. The actual left does have work to do regarding unlearning transphobia and not minimizing it. In these cases, hello class reductionists, we should challenge that hierarchical and dismissive thinking along with challenging political leaders and institutions of power. This seems like such a mild take. If you think that a group made up of primarily cis people socialized in a racist and xenophobic, transphobic, and cis-sexist society haven't internalized some of that messaging, then you underestimate the true prevalence and insidiousness of these systems. And that's about actual leftists. But Chappell was referring to the Dems, and she was way more correct about them. The Dems have often been cowards when it comes to trans liberation. Watch this. This is a Democrat, by the way.
I'm a dad. I'm also a Christian. And my faith has taught me that all kids are God's kids. So let me be clear. I don't want boys playing girls' sports or any of this ridiculous stuff that Ted Cruz is saying. Ted Cruz is lying about my record because he can't defend his own. He's done nothing to secure the border.
What we just watched is a Democrat repudiating trans people as if saying he supported them was an egregious insult, a lie told to slander him by a disgusting monster. They have been sweeping trans people under the rug for years now, trying to avoid giving Republicans any opportunity to use the groomer panic against them. And
at this year's Democratic convention in Chicago, trans people were notably absent from the stage. While LGBTQ+ rights broadly and same-sex marriage specifically were referenced several times, transgender people appeared to be mentioned by just 2 speakers across 20 hours of the convention's main programming slate.
When asked why there were no trans speakers, no Palestinian speakers for that matter, the DNC and the Harris campaign declined to comment. Being ignored is probably better than being attacked, but it isn't the same as real support for trans liberation, and it definitely isn't progress. And it isn't stopping Project 2025, no matter what angry centrists yell at you.
How about save your criticisms when they won't be directly used by your political opponents to prevent Kamala from being elected and enabling Project 2025? How is this hard for you?
If your rhetoric here is just she should wait until after the election to criticize Kamala Harris's support of genocide, you are complicit in trying to silence those speaking out against that genocide. If it is your position that it is unethical for a voter to ever mention that the funding of a genocide is a problem because an election is near, I do not believe you are fundamentally opposed to that genocide. And if you heard both sides have problems and left with this take,
fine people on both sides? What a privileged bitch.
I'd likely say you should go get LASIK surgery. Not because it'll help, but because it won't. And I'm petting you. I've seen people say that all she needed to do was not say both sides, but come on. If she hadn't mentioned both sides and only discussed her issues endorsing the candidate she was voting for, they would have said she's a Republican for not mentioning Trump and condemning both him and his policies. There is no avenue through which she could have criticized the Democrats without this being the outcome. None. Again, the party line here is, if it's anywhere near an election, you are not allowed to make these criticisms. If anyone starts drama over this, I will hate you forever. But this sentiment was said by D'Angelo Wallace, who released a 30-minute video on the Chappell Roan endorsement controversy, in which he criticized her speaking out at this time and for mispronouncing Kamala Harris's name, but was entirely silent on Israel's attacks on Palestine. As in, despite that being the main reason Chappell stated that she would not endorse Kamala, he literally never once addressed it, spoke of it, or took a stand with Chappell against it in the video. It's apparent to me that some liberals need to pretend that she is an uneducated woman who needs media training and a communications degree before she can talk about her politics. But the truth is that in her early morning ramblings that she filmed off the cuff with Bedhead, in which she misspoke several times, she showed more compassion, backbone, and character than nearly all of her critics combined. People consistently point out that she's from a Republican Midwest Christian family, as if that's a gotcha. But she came from that, and she's farther to the left than most of the people criticizing her. Most of the people saying that. A queer person coming from a conservative family and town and learning all of that and becoming an outspoken advocate against it doesn't make her look bad. I can't say the same about the people sitting comfortably in the center whose total political contribution is voting every couple of years and haranguing lesbians on the internet. The issue isn't that she spoke without carefully selecting her words. It's that she spoke without allowing them to carefully select her words for her. The issue is that she spoke at all. That she spoke truth to power. So does saying that she stands against Trump, but that she thinks Kamala's platform and party is imperfect serve as proof that she's a Republican? No. But the fact that people try to write her off as one does show there's a problem in the party that needs to be addressed. Not guilty. Or whatever. Let's move on. One issue that was taken with Chappell's response that was actually kind of valid as an issue. It was also the least reasonable evidence that she was secretly a Republican. Chappell, who frequently has to correct people who call her Chappell Roan, called Kamala Harris Kamala, as opposed to Kamala, which is how she pronounces it.
Chappell Roan, zero talent, entitled, and cloaked in white privilege, whining about what's wrong with the Democratic Party when she can't even pronounce the vice president's name correctly. See you next Tuesday, you fugly
Chappell Roan couldn't even pronounce Kamala's name right and claimed that the Democratic Party is transphobic. She is wildly ignorant.
Get f***ed, Chappell Roan. Learn to pronounce Kamala's name right and quit giving subtle approval to any of your fans who boycott. Any public figure who refuses to be a moral arbiter doesn't deserve the spotlight. Hashtag RIP Bozo. Sabrina Carpenter, we're watching you.
She knows how to pronounce hashtag Kamala, just like hashtag Trump, and all his KK clan maggots know how to pronounce it. Chappell Roan pronounces it incorrectly as a sign of stupidity, disrespect, and racism toward the first female and first black vice president. Hashtag Chappell Roan. Hashtag Kamala Harris.
Roan can't even pronounce Kamala's name correctly. She's most likely a closet Republican who just fears harming her income stream.
Chappell threw a fit. People pronounced her stage name wrong. She's had 4 years to learn how to pronounce the vice president's name and still can't do it. TBH, I think she's just a Republican who's trying to hide it to profit off of the left.
Classic Republican tactic of standing against everything they stand for and saying fuck Trump. She's on that good 5D chess. I'm sure Kamala has spent much of her life having to correct people on how she wants her name to be pronounced, and that quite often it is intentionally mispronounced as a racist microaggression. Or like a regular-sized aggression. A big aggression. One that builds and snowballs every time it happens. By now, I bet it's pretty annoying to constantly have your name mispronounced. Something I, Caleb Conrad, know nothing about. Occam's razor here would dictate that she's likely mostly reading the name online and came to her own pronunciation, not that this is a secret tell that she's a closet Republican. But she should pronounce her name correctly, and I'm sure she will after this. And if she doesn't, I'll criticize her for that. But the sentiment that if you mispronounce a person's name, all of your beliefs on their actions are somehow thrown out the window? No. You can argue that you no longer have to take someone's condemnation of genocide seriously if the person condemning it mispronounces the person funding its name, but unlike a mispronunciation, there's no question on whether or not that position is intentional. And I agree. I think if you're going to point out that someone is funding a genocide, you should pronounce their name correctly. So for everyone that wasn't aware it's Kamala, say it with me, okay? Kamala Harris is funding a genocide. See? It's legitimately not that hard. Get it together, Chappell Roan. I will, however, take note of it if you've spent more time attacking Chappell Roan for mispronouncing a name than an elected official for supporting Israel, which is burning people alive in hospitals and blowing up fucking babies. And I know it's inconvenient to people who want to pretend like nothing matters but their own rights, but Chappell doesn't seem like she's going to shut up about it. And neither am I. In fact, I'm about to do the exact opposite. I've seen people ask the following. If the president doesn't control Israel, what promises could Kamala even make? What do leftists want from her? And the reasons they ask this are one of two. They either have never bothered to look into it, or they already know and are wasting your time. When CNN's Dana Bash asked Kamala, would you do anything differently?
Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I'm unequivocal and unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense and its ability to defend itself. And that's not going to change.
When Dana Bash pressed further and said,
but no change in policy in terms of arms and so forth.
No, we have to get a deal done.
Which means until Israel agrees to stop their genocide, Kamala will continue to supply them with support, money, and weapons to continue it. So what do leftists want? What did Chappell want? For her not to do that. For the Democratic Party to refuse to supply Israel with weapons and money, knowing both are being and going to continue to be used in the commission of war crimes. Paul O'Brien, executive director of Amnesty International USA, said,
"Enough is enough. The U.S. government has been presented with ample evidence from experts around the world that U.S. origin arms have been used in war crimes and unlawful killings by the Israeli government. Continued weapon transfers will make the U.S. complicit in violations of international law committed with these arms." And even in its own assessment, the U.S. determined that it is reasonable to assess that Israeli security forces have used U.S. weapons to violate international humanitarian law.
And despite that, the United States has approved another $20 billion in weapons transfers to Israel. And it wasn't Republicans, it was Biden's Secretary of State Antony Blinken who approved the sale, which included fighter jets and missiles. What leftists want is for this to stop. For the Democrats to use their leverage here to force a ceasefire. But instead, they have promised to continue to fund and arm military operations which have turned thousands of Palestinian children into amputees in a span of months, many of them having limbs amputated without anesthesia as Israel continues its reign of terror and cuts off desperately needed medical care. Israel even announced that it was, according to AP News,
examining a plan to seal off humanitarian aid to northern Gaza, giving Palestinians a week to leave the northern third of the Gaza Strip, including Gaza City, before declaring it a closed military zone. Those who remain would be considered combatants, meaning military regulations would allow troops to kill them, and denied food, water, medicine, and fuel, according to a copy of the plan given to the Associated Press by its chief architect, who says the plan is the only way to break Hamas in the north and pressure it to release the remaining hostages.
The day before I filmed this, news broke of a letter being sent from the United States Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense to Israel. It did not call for an end to the killing, though. It simply told Israel that if they don't allow humanitarian aid in, then the US may stop giving them or selling them weapons. But, and this is very important, they had 30 days to comply. The deadline falling 10 days after the United States presidential election will be decided. If this plan were enacted today, by the time the clock had run down on those 30 days, the people trapped in this closed military zone would have all died, either from dehydration, starvation, illness, bullets, or bombs. The response to this letter among the left was pretty universal.
The children will have starved to death before then. A well-nursed, healthy adult can only go about 14 days without food. There has been none for them for the entirety of October. We're 16 days into enforced starvation already.
Israel has blocked food from entering northern Gaza for 2 weeks already. By the time this grace period is over, people will have spent a month and a half without food. Most people die from starvation within 3 weeks. This isn't a warning. It's a license to kill.
Really happy to hear this. I'll definitely be ready to vote for Kamala in 30 days when the arms embargo is in place.
So they have a month to continue slaughtering people, but post-election, they might stop providing weapons since they've been violating U.S. law on military aid for a year. Got it.
It's insane that the entire world is treating a genocide like a mother counting to 3.
America just gave Israel 30 days to finish the job. Brace yourself. It's about to get even worse.
I almost wish I believed hell was real. Because I know this is where everyone in the world who enabled so much horrific bloodshed would end up, and the last bit of sand in the hourglass falls.
I want to be wrong about this. I wish I felt like this was just cynicism, but I don't. This feels entirely like a last-ditch effort to convince people on the left to vote for Kamala. And I can see why they do it. Polling has shown that 75% of Democrats now oppose Israeli military action in Gaza. And Kamala continuing to support said action is in direct opposition to the party she is representing. She is calling for a ceasefire while doing literally nothing, promising literally nothing, except for maintaining that Israel never has any pressure whatsoever, never encounters a single real roadblock. What good is calling for a two-state solution when you vow to hand Israel what it needs to make sure there's no one left to live in one of the states? Nobody who values human life and rights would endorse that. They want to pretend this is an issue of foreign policy. They intend to wave away all responsibility, that the Democrats are trying their best, but the Republicans are preventing them from any meaningful change, and they're the good guys. But what about Jerry Connolly, Debbie Dingell, Dwight Evans, Josh Gottheimer, Glenn Ivey, Bill Keating, Greg Landsman, Rick Larson, Susie Lee, Kathy Manning, Jared Moskowitz, and Dina Titus? All of whom voted that the US should help Israel develop new weapons technologies, send more weapons to Israel through 2027, and deploy US crafts to Israel, and all of whom has significant investments in defense contractors that build the weapons of war that are being supplied to Israel, all of whom stand to profit from America's ongoing funding of this genocide. You've got goddamn Democrats with tens of thousands of dollars in Lockheed Martin stocks voting to arm Israel, and liberals are shaking their heads at a lesbian drag queen for saying this is problematic. You've got Debbie Dingell, chair of the House Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, who has between $100,000 and $250,000 invested in Honeywell, the company that revolutionized precision bombing. Honeywell today is basically a handful of murderous American corporations in a blood-soaked trench coat that creates the weapons and components that are found among the bodies in Gaza. Honeywell components were found in the rubble of the United Nations-run school in a Gazan refugee camp where displaced citizens were sheltering, where 14 children and 9 women were killed, where at minimum 74 other people were wounded by the US-made weapons that were used to carry out the attack. But no change in policy in terms of arms?
No, we have to get a deal done.
If a person can look at this and to earnestly say that anyone saying both sides have problems is somehow unethical or uneducated or dangerous to human rights, I'd say the reason they believe that is that they need to in order to sleep at night. Kamala Harris and every politician should be out here begging people to vote for them, promising them change, hope. But when you expect fealty, when you expect people to vote for you, when what you're offering is if you don't, someone worse will win and bad things will happen to you, you've already lost so many votes. And that's on you. Chappell Roan said even through all of this, she was still gonna vote for Kamala. She just wasn't going to keep her mouth shut about the abject failures of the party to address many voters' concerns. And if speaking out against those failings causes you to want to retaliate, to shut the dissident up, then you yourself are functioning as an enemy to liberation and progress. And it's no surprise to me that the people using this as an opportunity to challenge her queerness seem not to understand queerness at all.
At Chappell Roan, how are you queer, an ardent defender of the drag community, and somehow a both sides are bad person?
If you challenge the queerness of Chappell Roan, or rather anyone, because they will not support the Democratic Party unquestioningly, you tip your hand. You reveal something about yourself, that you believe that the sole reason you fight for the expansion of human rights is that it will benefit you personally. That you are a progressive until you no longer personally feel you benefit from the progress. But when you value human rights intrinsically for all people, simply because all people deserve them, because all people deserve freedom, autonomy, and happiness, that's noticeable. And if you build your ethics centering yourself, it also shapes the way you see the world. And so even if you somehow end up at the same conclusion about an issue as someone who does not center themselves, if you show your math, you are traveling entirely different paths. They converge in places, but they are not in alignment. Queer has only recently become shorthand for the entire spectrum of gender, sexual, and romantic minorities. But when queer was reclaimed, it was reclaimed by those who sought radical reform, who were revolting against the state, the cops, society. When queer was reclaimed, it was reclaimed over the bodies of lovers and activists, and it was ripped out of the mouths of politicians who were happy to watch us die because it was more convenient than lifting a fucking finger to save our lives. So when people like Bill Maher get on national television and make gleeful jokes about Chappell Roan being thrown off of a roof in Gaza for being gay, something there's no record of ever happening, that doesn't actually point to our position being incoherent. It demonstrates their depravity and maliciousness. When these people find a contradiction in Queers for Palestine, the contradiction lies in their own limited understanding of the roots of the reclamation. Queers vehemently oppose the capitalist state and the politicians who continue to work in opposition to liberation. We oppose those in power who hold up their bloody hands in innocence, saying we already said we wanted peace, moments after handing over weapons of war that ensure peace is impossible. And anyone who questions someone's queerness because they oppose the state-sponsored murder of innocent people, of their government funding and supplying the weapons used in war crimes, maybe they should consider they might be the one appropriating that fucking word. After being slandered, libeled, dehumanized, harassed, called slurs, and worse, called straight for days, Chappell Roan pulled out of her next scheduled appearance at the All Things Go Music Festival, a lineup of incredible and incredibly queer artists, nearly all of whom were women. I found out about the cancellation pretty much right after landing in New York, specifically going there with my boyfriend, who helped me write this script, to attend the festival. I've never been to a festival before, or New York City, or really ever on a plane. So I was incredibly excited to see Chappell Roan perform. And in no way did I blame her for canceling, especially after reading why.
I apologize to people who've been waiting to see me in NYC and DC this weekend at All Things Go, but I am unable to perform. Things have gotten overwhelming over the past few weeks, and I'm really feeling it. I feel pressures to prioritize a lot of things right now, and I need a few days to prioritize my health. I want to be present when I perform and give the best shows possible. Thank you for understanding. Be back soon. Hugs and kisses.
Radical thought here? People should be allowed to take a day off, even if they perform art, even if they're calling in sick. Wild, I know. I'm not going to get into the backlash to this. We can all guess what it was by now. Instead, I want to share the support she received from other artists, both at the festival and online. Ethel Cain, the main reason I bought the festival tickets, who has never stopped being vocal about her condemnation of the genocide being committed by Israel, pretty quickly spoke out in support of Chappell.
Like, y'all cannot be stupid enough to scream "F Israel" all year, rightfully so, and then go happily vote for Kamala and mean the out of her like everybody did Trump. Like, she didn't just get up on that debate stage and say Israel has the right to blow the entire Levant to smithereens. Do not piss me off. And the fact that even slight criticism of Kamala, the public servant we're expected to elect as the president of our country, as the progressive option, is seen as immediate, unwavering support of Trump? Y'all cannot actually be this stupid. I don't want to believe it.
There was confusion around what would happen during Chappell's time slot, but in her place, a troupe of local drag queens came out, performing their hearts out to her set list, and the crowd went wild. It was pouring rain, and instead of leaving for cover while the queens were on and waiting for the next act, this was the most energetic the crowd had been up until that point. See, we all wanted to see Chappell, but the truth is that the art itself means so much to so many people. And seeing the largely queer crowd dancing and clapping and screaming, it was the first time at the festival I saw that kind of energy. And I would see it again when Muna, a queer band, spoke out in support of Chappell during their set.
Somebody very special is missing tonight, and we just want to say that we love Chappell so much. We started as a queer band in 2014, and we've really been given the time and the grace that we needed to be nourished as artists, and we wish nothing but that times a million for her.
The day of, they very quickly learned and rehearsed Chappell's Good Luck Babe and performed an acoustic cover of it, with the crowd again losing their shit. The solidarity in that moment really hit me hard, but then Muna took it further. Watch.
We're staunchly against the American far right, and we're terrified by the way that an anti-queer and anti-trans attitude has manifested itself in our current political climate. But on top of this, we want abolition. We want the well-being of people and animals and land to be prioritized over the well-being of the global market. And we want total disarmament and world peace now. And there should be nothing fucking controversial about saying that. So before we play this song, we just want to say, fuck fascism, wherever its ugly head crops up, and very importantly, we continue to say, free, free Palestine!
Hearing an entire stadium of people standing in the pouring rain screaming "Fuck fascism, free Palestine," that's not an experience I'm gonna forget. After a violent hate crime left me unable to work, sometimes unable to walk, and eventually completely agoraphobic to the point that I had decided I could no longer continue living, I thought I would never get to experience this kind of queer celebration again. Thought I would never again feel the safety that comes from solidarity, even in the face of truly cataclysmic times. But the art of people like Chappell Roan and Ethel Cain, Muna, Janelle Monáe has time and time again brought me to places where I am surrounded by queer resilience and resistance. And despite all of that, I did not make this video because I am a fan of Chappell Roan. I made this video because I believe art is vital to revolution, to progression. I believe that making art that does not compromise gives others the courage to do the same, to make art that can change someone, save someone, Because even if you don't know it, your art matters. Your voice matters, even if you think nobody is listening to what you're saying. And to participate in that, to be lucky enough to get to change the world through your art, yes, that is a privilege. But it doesn't mean you stop being worthy of respect or kindness or autonomy. It doesn't mean you stop being a human. In fact, it is the most human thing you could ever want to do. The hierarchies of society, including celebrity, should be dismantled. But regardless of its popularity or its reach, art that stands for something is everything to me. It's why I'm still here. It's why I make what I make. It's why this video exists now. And it's why Chappell continues to do what she does.
I can't read my DMs anymore because I cry so much. But when people are like, whatever you're doing, it helped me, I don't think any award or any money or whatever can be exchanged for that compliment. I don't care about anything else except giving space to people to be free. Because that's what I needed so bad. Freedom.
And listen, I'm not going to tell you who to vote for or why. You shouldn't be getting that from me. I'm Canadian, by the way. And you shouldn't be getting it from any actual celebrities either. As Chappell says, we're just random bitches. What I can tell you is that enforcing silence on the failings of the Democrats because you expect unwavering loyalty is not progressive, but regressive. You cannot claim you are pushing for change when you attempt to silence the people who question those in power who refuse to change. What I can tell you is that you cannot stay quiet, you cannot let up, that we have to continue to say that's not good enough, and you can't keep doing this no matter who falls short, no matter who does wrong. And those who stand against people who continue to call out how politicians are failing us, or failing the people of Palestine, who try to silence this dissent, you'll never convince me that someone who does that isn't dangerous, that their complacency isn't the same as being complicit. The early queer rights movement coined a phrase that I think cuts through all of the nonsense around this with ease. And it's something to think about the next time you hear the rhetoric that using your voice, refusing to be silent, is dangerous for queer rights. During the height of the AIDS crisis, this slogan was printed on flyers and wheat pasted around New York City. It was simple, a solid black background, and centered on it a pink triangle, a symbol reclaimed from the Nazis who used it to brand and persecute queers during the Holocaust. And underneath that, in large white lettering, it read, "Silence equals death." God, I'm so tired. I've been filming for like 6 hours now. Please support me on Patreon so when I do feature-length video essays like this, I don't have to put out shorter content like reaction videos to pay my rent and dent that month. And dent? And debt. And I'd love that. Go listen to my podcast that I co-host with Hoots, who voiced Chappell Roan in this video. You can check out the channel Brona is Gay. Oh my God, They made the Pink Pony Club cover that's featured in the opening credits. That's it. Share this video if you love gay people. And comment on it if you don't. I guess you usually do. Both help me in the algorithm. Okay, I love you so much. Bye.